You don't have a almighty system where an artist can go and say, hey, give me a list of my 1,000 true best fans. One of the biggest practical implications of moving this super ticket direction is enabling more tangible fandom.
The super ticket. Martin Berg is the CEO of DX. He is an expert in ticketing and has been doing it for many, many years. We're talking about blockchain, NFTs, and the super ticket. What does that mean for the future of live entertainment? This is a very important talk to understand what will happen in the future. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Sound Connections podcast. Martin Berg, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Martin, we've known each other for a little while, and we have a thing in common that we really like tickets for different reasons. I'm a part of a ticketing startup, and you have a ticketing company that's very successful within the cinema world. And more than that, you are great at writing small pieces on LinkedIn about technology topics. And I've been following you very vividly. And you were one of the very good Midjourney prompters back in the day, so well done. But now you have a lot of great thoughts on different things. Martin, we're going to talk about super tickets today. And it's an interesting topic that actually very few people have a good grasp of. But to set the scene, Martin, who are you and what do you do?
So I am the CEO of DX. We're a tech company. We do ticketing and venue management systems for cinemas, but also for live event venues. My background is originally as a graphics designer. A long journey from there to where I am today. And I am just really curious about technology in general, and I guess that's what's kind of led me down this path of super tickets and some of the technology that surrounds that concept. One
of the really interesting things about our talk today is I was reading a post you did, or rather a blog post talking about super tickets. And what I think is very interesting about your profile is that you run a ticketing company, so you obviously know about the ticketing industry, but the way you write about new technology is rather objective. You're not like this evangelist going out preaching like, this technology, this startup. It's more like, at least as I read it, objective observations of technology and how it's going to approach us, but then you also have domain expertise for doing it yourself, and also the emotional investment of what do we need to do. But you got into DX, and has that always been a passion of you? Like you want to do ticketing, or how did you end up there?
No. So the backstory for DX, the DX is not a startup. It's quite the opposite of a startup. We're approaching our 30th year in existence, which is impressive. I think there's not a lot of technology companies that go on for 3 decades, but it was originally started by my father as a on-premise software company shipping CDs and disk drives and stuff out to customers. So I kind of fell or walked backwards into the ticketing industry by way of my father being the founder of this company. Worked here in a bunch of different roles, and been CEO for the past 5 years now. And obviously we've come a long way since the very beginnings of on-premise based software. We're now a software as a service company. We're currently building an entirely new next generation of our platform. So it's been a journey. The fact that it's ticketing more by accident, but it's a space that I've grown really passionate about over like the past 10, 12 years. So a bunch of interesting nuance to it, and not just the ticketing itself. one of the important things for us in at DX and what we build is that we really believe in like understanding the value chain behind the ticket, whether that's on the cinema side with regards to distribution and studios, or in the live event side with artists and booking agencies and stuff. So in a lot of the products we build, we like build deep integrations and tools to serve the whole value chain and not just the ticket sales itself.
Yeah. Because it is a complex industry. And if you think ticketing is only about tickets, then you're just scratching the surface. I think we'll talk a bit about that in depth. But the concept of super ticket, can you unfold that a bit for me?
Yeah. So where it comes from is we reading and thinking about like the combination of these emerging technologies, NFTs, blockchain networks, and so on, in the context of ticketing and I guess the entertainment industry at large. And during the like initial NFT craze a few years back, one of the like real world utility examples that were pulled forward and still being pulled forward is tickets. Tickets should be NFTs, and that's good. A cool thing. And I want to understand that concept better. I think there are some really interesting properties of this technology that is helpful in some cases with regards to ticketing. We also think it's like that conversation over-index on a very small subset of what I think is the broader potential. So the idea of this super ticket is to consider the tickets like across three dimensions. Like a ticket gives you access to something that's like the core thing. But a ticket also has two other interesting qualities. One is as a collectible, or I think of them as memory tokens in like a digital context. The way that we, back when tickets were paper-based, kept ticket stubs after concerts and serves as a memory of me being there. And the third thing is that it's like a proof of something. It's a proof of being there, experiencing something, almost like an attestation for the ticket holder. And the super ticket is like a theoretical concept exploring how NFT technology, for instance, can be used to amplify all three of these qualities of a ticket.
Yeah.
Because if you consider the journey of tickets from paper ticket to what's now the de facto standard of like the ticket is digital, but it's either an email or it's a PDF attached to an email, or it's a QR code in an app. But once the event is over, that ticket is moved to some off-screen archive. So we got really good at the frictionless access quality of tickets when we made them digital. So like lost the both the memory quality and I think to a pretty significant degree also this utilizing the proof of attendance quality of tickets, which we didn't really have with paper tickets either. So it's like a new quality.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things to unfold in that, because already now from the outset, that sounds very theoretical. But when you look towards where technology is taking us, it goes quite beyond just theoretical. Sometimes I like to start with a conclusion and then sort of build towards it. One of the things you say in your blog post is you believe in some time all tickets will have NFTs it belongs to NFTs or being NFT tickets. Let's not explore why you say that first. Let us just go to, first of all, okay, so you have these three functions. You have entrance, you have memorabilia, and you have proof. Beyond the theoretical aspect of that, what are the practical applications of addressing these three different legs?
Well, I think one of the really important adjacent concepts to the super ticket is the idea of fandom. Like, what is fandom, and how that drives pretty much any entertainment property, whether it's a movie franchise or an artist or a sports team. Fandom is like this aggregate energy that powers the whole thing. And to me, the super ticket is a tool to utilize and leverage fandom in a more tangible way. If you consider an artist today, the proof or the data of engagement, it's like siloed and fragmented across a bunch of different platforms and places. You've sold tickets, you have fans stream your music on Spotify, you have people making fan videos on TikTok, and it's all fragmented. And you have people that bought tickets and went to your concerts, and they're like no really good way to. And you don't have a almighty system where an artist can go and say, "Hey, give me a list of my 1,000 true best fans." And so I think one of the biggest practical implications of moving this super ticket direction is enabling more tangible fandom. And utilizing that in a way that benefits both the object of that fandom, but also the fans that power that energy.
Yeah, because if you look at tickets, it's also just on a base logical level, one of the best indicators of seeing if a person is a fan, or at least saying a person who have bought a ticket to your concert is most likely a fan. And it's hard to say that in other different ways of consumption of music, but whether concerts tickets being probably the most evident. That makes a lot of sense, and we speak a lot about fandom on this podcast. We've had amazing guests that are experts in this space, and as you say, ticketing keeps getting mentioned, but it also seems like it's still a bit out of reach in a way, because if everyone agrees this must be the way, and people have said that for a couple of years, what is standing in the way of this being implemented?
It's a good question, and I think there are several things. One that I can relate to from my perspective is building a ticketing system and having done so over many years, and seeing towards many other sectors of the entertainment space where a lot of them it's a technology challenge. Like, there are a bunch of things that I may want us to do at the X, but that is just not practically possible for us to do on our current technology stack, for instance. So I think that's one part of it. I think another pretty significant part of it is people orienting towards proprietary data in so like this protective fashion. Like when we talk about NFTs and blockchains, and we assume that the people listening understand the general properties of a blockchain, but one of the important things is that it's a public ledger, so it's the very opposite of like safeguarding proprietary data and keeping it walled off in a database and then finding ways to monetize this data because I'm the only one that has access to it. And putting things on the public blockchain is like the absolute opposite of that approach, right? So I think there's like business and strategy concerns, or not necessarily concerns, but it's like this is the ingrained way that we do things, and data as value, so we keep data close to us and we protect it.
It's a really interesting point. One of the things when I'm out in the market speaking to players in this field is there's now a few different infrastructure companies that are working on this, like by building private banking blockchains, like how banks use it and how implementing that in other productizations, for the exact reason that, you have data that's worth something. You don't want to put it in the public, but you can tokenize it in a private setting. Do you think if that technology, the underlying technology, is adopted at large, that will maybe address the issue you're mentioning?
But from a privacy concern, it will. And that's another challenge or new paradigm rather than pattern for us as consumers to like grow accustomed to. Also, this concept of data available on a public ledger. Like imagine we move all of e-commerce on chain. It's probably not an optimal situation that I can, because I follow you on chain, I can see everything that you're buying, every single online store, and I can do that with my neighbor. And probably not an optimal or wanted situation, right? So that's why there's a lot of technology or like blockchain related technology that aims to address these privacy concerns with zero knowledge proofs and so on. Don't ask because it's too technical for I don't properly understand it, but generally just being able to prove that I know this thing or have done this thing without showing you the actual data of the thing. Creates a privacy layer. So I think, blockchain technology will evolve to the place where that becomes less of a concern. And so I think maybe what you're left with is this, the business value of legacy data and already gathered data, and which, for instance, in this ticketing consideration, or considering the ticketing industry, I think it's really interesting, who leverages blockchains in the best way. Will it be incumbent existing players that adopt the technology, or will it be new ticketing providers that have built natively on top of blockchains and can do something unique because they're not dependent on old strategies or business dependencies?
That's really interesting. We've talked with Paul Brodlund, who's a Norwegian CEO from Music DNA. He talks about tokenization of the data, which basically means, I'm paraphrasing, but you have legacy data that you're not using or using it very limited, and have the opportunity to monetize that through other ways of utilizing from different products, different companies. He calls it, tokenization of data in a collaboration model. Have you had any thoughts of that? If there was a possibility of tokenizing your legacy data and making that available for other types of monetization through marketing or that kind of stuff?
Like I understand the concept, and I guess there are, like, I could see scenarios where that's an approach that might make sense in, like, across different industries, and would, among other things, require that you actually have someone or something that's interested in, like, ingesting that data in a meaningful way and being able to monetize it. But I think, like, one of the, like, fundamental concepts of, like, on-chain products that, like, got me interested in originally some years back is this orientation of shifting, ownership and the power of controlling data from middlemen and to the consumer.
Yeah.
We've built this interesting internet that our currency is attention, and we get services for free, but we get a bunch of ads in return, right? That's the whole internet that we built. And so I think it's more interesting to, like, consider like, what does products and the value proposition for consumers look like in this world where the power is sort of, like, more leveled out, whereas consumer can have more control of my online identity and the data that I collect as I move around online, and that's one of the really interesting parts of blockchain networks, I think, is this idea that I can bring me and my history and my data across the internet to different services, and I can choose to share data because there's an interesting incentive given back to me. So
that's great. So you're looking through it from a consumer level, and let's just be practical with tickets. For example, you are a person who has attended several shows where there was NFTs as tickets, and you now have digital proof you were there and you own those NFTs. And then let's say you meet certain productizations where you can utilize that proof to have a benefit. Do you have any practical examples of how that might look?
So the the base examples that people will pull forward here is, like, unlocking something after the event, and maybe the unlocking of something, whether it's like a limited edition merch or like a after event video or whatever. To me, that's maybe less about unlocking the something and more about, like, re-engaging and keeping a connection with the fan or the customer or whatever we want to call them after the events, like moving beyond thinking about an event as a like standalone independent thing and more a part of a continuous journey. It's like if you have like your favorite artist, or the example that I use coming from, like, the movie industry. If you're a big Marvel fan, you're not a Marvel fan when you go to the movies to see the latest Marvel movie, and then when you go out of the theater, your fandom ceases to exist. It's like a continuous thing. And so it's like thinking about these different interaction or touch points for a fan to connect with and engage with the thing that they're passionate about, and having all of these different touch points to, like, bond together, and over time they accumulate to some kind of benefit. So, like, it's like a continuous thing. I think that's one of the interesting concepts. And going back to the like the music industry, you could think of the example the opposite way. Like it's not the ticket that serves as like the thing that you show, but the ticket is the thing that you get because you have proof of these other ways that you have engaged over time, whether it's like streaming music or creating or curating content, or and because you have proof of fandom, you get free access to buy the ticket.
That's a really interesting concept, and I've thought about it a lot before, but not sort of in the way that you describe it, through like a chain of events, and a chain of touch points might equate to something. You know, I'm just making a hypothetical scenario. Like one of the big critiques with, you know, the whole Taylor Swift tour is that the actual fans, even if they wanted to spend the money, they just simply couldn't. There wasn't enough quantity, and all the deals that were existing with credit card companies and business deals. And so even if you fan that had the capital to buy it, that was by no means a guarantee that you can get any tickets. I'm not saying that situation would be different, but what you're saying is there's methods in the future, from if you are a approved fan with several different touch points, that you can be given preference to certain things. And I think especially when you come into the big commercial at scale use, that really plays in. You want to be in a room with the people who want it the most. That is a good thing for an artist.
Yeah, true. And it's interesting that you pull out the Taylor Swift example, because it's like the first thing that feels like everyone, including myself, but talking about music and live events and big concerts and ticketing, and it's like the beautiful concept or example to pull forward, like the way that she broke Ticketmaster when the tickets went on sale and stuff. And I think it's really good that you pull forward that example, because one of the things that I push a bit back on with this super ticket thesis, it's also like a lot of the talk around NFT tickets orient towards NFT tickets help solve scalping. NFT tickets helps, you get to capture resale revenue, royalties on resale. And like those are the two really big, like this is what NFT tickets can enable. And nobody was like paused to consider the fact that for the vast majority of venues and artists and theaters and whatever selling tickets, scalping and reselling are like non-issues. It's like the most in-demand events, which is like probably 1%, I don't know. There's like a tiny sliver. It's like the top 5% of events have this problem, right? And for most other events, you don't have a massive scalping problem, or and that's also one of the things that I wanted to try to address with this concept of the super ticket. Like, how can this technology be used as a positive something that maybe can let artists or creators or whatever sell more tickets, or create more value from their fans, because the scalping and reselling are almost like like using the technology to just like stop surplus demand for what you're selling, and very few artists have that problem, unfortunately, maybe, but it's the reality.
It's actually really interesting because, you know, I spend a lot of time in this space, and we've had an interview for 30 minutes. And it's first now we talk about actually the two biggest talk points you had about this technology. But I'm of the same conviction of you that I think in an investor setting, if you have a startup, talking about those two major problems are very visible. It's very tangible. You have many examples, but it's much harder to preach the future, which is the way of spending money will change. Artists will not accept the power structures right now. They will not accept that they don't have an influence of how to engage with fans. And the underlying technology powering the industry will change and facilitate an infrastructure where you can monetize on these things. And it's much harder to tell that problem. But, you know, with you and me that spend a lot of time in this space, that's really what's exciting is, you know, on a day-to-day level, people can be affected through their fandom and through different utilities in order to supplement the experience. It can expand the experience. It can even enable an experience that wasn't accessible before. And this speaks so much to the superfan economy that the music industry is so tied up to right now because, you know, being honest, our industry is too small. We need more revenue. So right now, the people who can spend more, wants to spend more, we need to create an infrastructure for them to actually do it. The problem with this is, Mats, and I would like your perspective on it, is the timeline. You know, there's a chicken and egg scenario in many different levels here. Could you expand that a bit for me? What is the chicken and egg scenario, and what is the timeline going into this if you were to make a thought experiment about it?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, from the perspective of it's like the super ticket, the chicken and eggs problem is that the true value of bringing tickets and other parts of fandom on chain only surfaces after we have moved it on chain. So there is like not that much of a like first degree value in doing it, but it's once all the different constituent parts have moved on chain, then you have access to this interoperable way of composing customer experiences. And that creates an interesting dynamic where what is the incentive to like invest significantly in technology, for instance, like for DX, what is the incentive for us to build a lot of technology in order to move tickets onto blockchains if if nobody else has done it yet, then there's nothing to interface with, so we can't create any additional value. Or maybe there are someone else, and so it creates additional value, but it happens so far out on the spectrum from where we are, so we're not able to capture any of it. Creates this interesting dynamic, I think. There are some projects that are working to and try to find ways to bridge this. Just last week, I was on a call with a project and called the Camp Network, like a blockchain layer 2 project that aims to create data backpacks for consumers. So it's like you put data from your Web2 social profiles like YouTube and streaming history on Spotify and stuff, and put that into like a data backpack. And you bring that with you on chain, so you now have data from the off-chain world, which you can bring into blockchain-enabled services that can then start building tailored experiences and stuff based on so like you hydrate the next generation experience with data from the previous generation experience. Like maybe things like that could solve this chicken and egg problem. The other thing that I think will eventually solve it is just it's like the force of a consumer will.
Yeah.
Like if consumers broadly and move in the direction of makes sense for us to own stuff online. We want more control of our own data, and we see that there's value in data, and we want to take a bigger part of like that whole economy. And so we start orienting towards the services that can enable that for us. Then also like just naturally create a force that pushes technology providers, service providers, including the DX, to build it, because our customers will start asking for it, because their customers start asking for it. Like, I prefer to be earlier than that, like personally, and the way that I think about building technology products. But more broadly, I think that's maybe what over time pushes an industry in a direction, and it's like the way that it's been historically as well, right? That consumer preference is
it's a really, really interesting concept what you're saying, and there's so many sides to it. Like, one is from an entrepreneur side. The week before this podcast has been released, a podcast with Scott Cohen came out, and he built The Orchard. That probably doesn't say anything to you. It's the world's first digital distribution company. They spent 8 years before iTunes came out, which means they built the underlying technology. So when iTunes came out, they represented a third of the digital licensed music out there, and then suddenly, it was a pretty successful company. But the audience can listen to that. But what's very clear from that story is those 8 years were pretty bleak, because they were so early on that they succeeded at the end, but that's not a guarantee that will happen. So the big question is for me is, when is the timing? Is the timing already now? Will it be in the future? Was it a couple of years ago? My own take on it is that I do see this consumer push. I also do see there's a lot of technology companies recognizing this consumer push. What I don't see is the infrastructure being there, and probably not in the near future. So the question is, if you build technology products, what's the timing in order to optimize that opportunity the best? And I guess that is the big question, because if your assumption holds true that this will happen, when is the timing? If you were to give your opinion on when the timing would be, what would that be?
Yeah. So, first of all, it makes me, like, this specifically, but being a part of and spending a lot of time on like on-chain things in general over the past few years served as like a constant reminder of something that's called Amara's law. Maybe you've heard about it. It's an Roy Amara, technologist. His law states that we tend to overestimate the impact of a new technology in the short term, and we significantly underestimate it in the long term. And speaking from like historic experience, I remember vividly when we first started building and launched mobile ticketing solutions at DX. We did that in 2011 with this conviction that we see people buy a significant amount of tickets online from their desktop computers. We think they'll do the same with their mobile phones. In the first few years after we launched that, barely any tickets were sold through mobile phones. And then it took, after a few years, it started being adopted, and now it makes up the majority of tickets sold online through our platform. And I spoke with some of the people that were here in like the early days when we first launched online ticketing. So it's just selling tickets online. DX was really early. We launched this in like 2002 or 2003. And for the first few years, nobody bought tickets online. And then over time, started increasing a little by little and then a lot. And now it's like almost every single ticket is sold online, either on a desktop computer or the majority shared now on mobile phones. And to me, it's those two DX experiences are like patterns of that law. Things take time. And so I think the same will be true here. I think it's still like a nascent technology, and that one that is yet to be fully understood by most people.
Sure.
And the thing that clouds everyone's view as one of the core unlocks of tokenization and blockchains is financializing things that were not financial before. And so the effect you get is a lot of financial speculation, right? And everyone gets caught up on like everything that's happening on like this over-indexing on financial speculation, and don't understand or pay attention to the developments that are like continuously happening. I am very, like, my conviction is stronger now than it was a few years ago. Because like for the past 2 years, nobody is like giving a crap about like crypto and blockchain and Web3 and NFTs, and like prices fell largely driven because of like inflation and interest rates and like just the macro picture. But with prices on the financial assets on blockchains plummeting, people just oriented their focus towards something else. It happened to be ChatGPT launching around the same time, right? So now everyone pays attention to AI. But those that were left in the space continue to build, and all of the things that I see being built and that have been built over the past 2 years, like tooling for creators, and whether it's like visual artists or music artists or writers, and so on the creator side, but also a lot of other, like the way that wallets work today versus 2 or 3 years ago. Like the space is maturing and it's getting more like wholesome. So, but like for mainstream, like going back to the timeline, I think it's still quite a few years until every ticket is an NFT. Maybe every ticket won't become an NFT. Like it needs to serve a purpose. That's like my other itch with NFT ticketing projects, is like if you sell NFT as the value prop, like something's wrong. Like there's got to be something that the technology unlocks that needs to be the value prop, and whether it's the scalping problem or it's the ticket as connective tissue in the fandom graph, like what the thing that different entertainment sectors will value the most, and it's yet to be discovered.
It's interesting. I'm super passionate about this space, and I believe in this space a lot. I think there's some beauty in this being overlooked for some time. I think sort of, especially from investor scaredness has decreased, and sort of we're coming to a calmness about it in a level that only serves the progress, to be honest. I don't think any technology have really been fully served by having too much hype and a subsequent crisis and fall. But it happens over and over again, so it's just a matter of learning from history, which is interesting that a lot of people don't do. Martin, I've really enjoyed this conversation. It might have been a bit nerdy, but it really touches upon the future of entertainment and its relationship to the consumers. And I think the concept of a super ticket is extremely interesting. Martin, I need to understand. Do you believe that there are some major political or bureaucratical or monopoly powers that are also contributing to the decrease of advancement in this space? Like, is it just a matter of infrastructure and consumers not tying together, or is there some other players in this space that are trying to stand against it? What do you think?
Feels like you're fishing.
No,
for
it's
something
actually
related to the atmosphere.
no, but I don't know for real. I don't know the depths of that question.
But okay, let me so the live event space, I worked I spend more of my time on like cinema and the value chain of cinema, and then I do live events. But like I said in the intro, we serve live event venues as well, and so I still spend some time or some of my time in that space. And obviously there's like a massive power concentration on the ticketing side, live events. It's a fact with Ticketmaster. But at the same time, like Ticketmaster is one of the companies that have actually been actively experimenting with this technology. I guess not with NFT tickets directly, but with like creating NFT attachments to tickets, for instance. I think on the Solana blockchain network, I think Ticketmaster is the one that's minted the most NFTs, for instance. And they did an interesting experiment with Avenged Sevenfold. I think they had a fan club with NFT membership cards, and so they did an on sale with Ticketmaster that was NFT gated, so you needed to prove that you had possession of the NFT membership card and so on. So maybe less like I won't say like whether or not power concentration is at play with regards to how fast this technology is being adopted in the space, but I think like a player like Ticketmaster having as much power as they do, they naturally will be able to also direct how fast and what innovation the space looks like.
I'll ask you one last question, Martin, and there's a lot of innovators and entrepreneurs listening to this podcast. And one of the things that I'm interested in is understanding the dynamic for them. The ticketing industry is an industry with a lot of power concentration, and the adaptation of new technology tends to make space for new businesses. Who do you believe will be out on top on this? Is it new businesses? Is it old businesses adapting from a more like, let's call it capitalistic leveling the playing field? What do you see will happen in the future?
It's a question that I actually spend quite a bit of time with, like pretty broadly. It's, to me, it's like the question of who benefits most from the technology unlocks of blockchains, for instance. And this said, existing companies that integrate this technology, or can new ventures be built natively and leverage the capabilities of the technology in a better way? And I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all answer to it. I think there are a lot of value for, say, like a big entertainment company like Disney to leverage this technology. In fact, I spent an unreasonable amount of time digging through a bunch of patent applications that Disney applied for relating to NFT technology. I actually wrote a piece on like breaking down some of the most interesting findings and trying to like fit it into the ecosystem of Disney.
Yeah.
And unearthing some things that I find really interesting and think can be valuable. At the same time, there's like a lot of really interesting stuff that's being built that's like native to blockchain technology, but also to what I refer to as on-chain culture. And you can't really understand on-chain culture unless you like submerge yourself in it, so to speak, spend time with people and spend time in those corners of the internet. But like on the music side, for instance, like there are like new streaming platforms being built where you can collect music as NFTs and where the revenue gets streamed to the artists. And then there are other people building fan club technology. And all of this is like, it happens in this tiny corner of the internet where everybody's sort of like just don't give a fuck about what's going on in the rest of the world. But I think those things will expand and grow as like more consumers come on chain. And there's a really interesting adaptation there. Yeah. So I think like if I were to start a new company tomorrow in this space, I think I would like 100% just build a on-chain native product for on-chain culture and taking the gamble of that. The same way that internet culture started as like a niche thing, then became massive, and then just became embedded in like broader culture. I think the same thing is going to happen here, so that you can build something for what is like a very niche market right now, and the market is going to expand significantly in the next decade.
There's so many things to take away from this talk, Martin. I'm going to go back to my team with what I do, and I'm going to show them this podcast. I've actually had multiple like small ideas and revelations and understandings fall into place hearing you talk, because
Gotcha.
You know, speaking to a person about this where we both have a good understanding of this space unlocks new conversations. Martin, thank you so much for being on the Sound Connections podcast. I wish you all the best with DX and have a great day.
Thanks for having me. Bye.